Hello! This week we will be learning how to say hello and goodbye in Spanish. Are you ready? To say hello in Spanish, you simply say hola. My next book reading is dedicated to my sons. Having worked in the education system for over 15 years, and especially maybe the last 10 at an all-boys school, I have come to love and know many of the boys as my sons, is what I call them. One time I called one of them my son. He said, "You're not my mama." And I said, "Well, you are somebody's son, right?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Okay, son." But I have had sons from Africa, sons from the United States, black, white, other. One of my white sons said at one time, he said he wished he was black. And I thought, wow, he understands the beauty of blackness. But what I actually told him was, you don't know what you're saying. Because being black comes with a lot of weight, especially in America. But I just want my sons to know, I want you all to know, I know some of you all I was just getting to know. The last school year I was there, but I had to go. I just want you all to know that I have prayed for you all, that I think about you all. Some have probably graduated high school. I know maybe there are some that have not even finished or may have dropped out, and I've heard some sad news. Some maybe have been incarcerated. Just life goes on after, school and certain grades. But I hope that you all know that I love you all. I'm praying for you. I know some have lost siblings. Pray for you all. If I could come to see some of you all. Actually, if I had all the money that I needed, I would throw a big dinner party. I would hunt you all down, find everyone. And for those who could come, I would have a great big dinner party. And anything that you all have against each other, or whatever issues, squalms, or whatever you all having at the time, it would have to be a cease and assist or something like that for the day. Where at my dinner party, I don't care if you had to sit all the way across the room from each other, there would be none of that for the day. And we would just have a good time. And that would, oh my goodness, be so amazing if I could be able to do that. And for those who may be incarcerated, I would come to see you. I sure would. I would let you know that I love you, that I'm thinking about you, and tell you some things that you might not know. But I just wanted to say that I love you all. I hope that you all, I know some are probably doing so great. And I'm telling you, I've had whatever you can think of. Some that might not smell so good. Some that may have had lice, bed bugs. Always fighting, always in trouble. But I love them all. I love them like I would hope that somebody would have loved my son, and try to treat them all, whether they were shy and didn't like to talk, even if they didn't like me. Maybe some of them didn't like me, but a lot of them probably loved me back. But even if they didn't like me, I still tried to love them as my own. So I call them my sons. So this next reading is dedicated to you all. I love you all. I miss you all. I hope you all are doing well. I'm sure some of you all have gone on to have children, but I really wish that I could see all of you all at one time. That would really do my heart good. Anyway, God is good. God is good. Know that everybody does not mean you well in this world. I miss some of the adults I used to work with. Some of them I don't, because I know that everybody didn't mean me well. But we're commissioned to love everybody. So I always tried to treat everybody nice and with respect. Some people I knew I couldn't trust, but that's just the way people are in the world we live in. I love you, my sons. I hope that whether you're doing well, whether you see this video or not, maybe somebody will pass the message that I love you, that I left this message for you, and I wish you all well, success. I hope some of you all get to travel different places all over the world and just go places with your life and advance yourself and your life. And I'm expecting to hear great things about some of you all and hope great things for all of you all. God bless you all. I love you. Whether you know me by Miss Baker, Miss Hill, or either those two names. whatever name you know me by. I love you all. God bless you all. And I miss you all. Crown, an ode to the fresh cut, written by Derrick Barnes, illustrated by Gordon C. James. When it's your turn in the chair, you stand at attention and forget about who you were when you walked through that door. You came in as a lump of clay, a blank canvas, a slab of marble. But when my man is done with you, they'll want to post you up in a museum. That's my word. He'll drape you like royalty with that cape to keep the fine hairs off of your neck and your princely robes. It's amazing what a tight fade, high-low, bald does for your confidence, Dark Caesar. Who knows? You might just smash that geography exam tomorrow and rearrange the entire principal's honor roll. A fresh cut does something to your brain, right? It hooks up your intellectual. You're a star, a brilliant, blazing star. Not the kind that you'll find on a sidewalk in Hollywood. Nope, they're going to have to wear shades when they look up to catch your shine. He'll lean you back in the chair, dab that cool shaving cream on your forehead, and then craft a flawless line with that razor. Slow, steady, surgical. It frames your swagger. The cute girl in the class across the way won't be able to keep her pretty eyes off of you. Her friends will giggle and whisper, "Girl, he's so fine." Yeah, that's what they'll say. The whole school will be seasick from the rows and rows of ripples. You'll have more waves on your head than the Atlantic Ocean. Shout out to my do-rag and Patience. There's a dude to the left of you with a faux hawk, deep part, skin fade. He looks presidential. Maybe he's the CEO of a tech company that manufactures cool. He's a boss. That's how important he looks. Dude to the right of you looks majestic. There are thousands of black angels waiting to guide and protect him as soon as he steps a foot out that door. That's how important he looks. There's a dude standing in the mirror that can't get over the masterful designs crafted on the side of his dome. Everywhere he goes, people will ask for his autograph. He looks that fresh. He looks like he owns a few acres of land on Saturn. Maybe there's a river named after him on Mars. He looks that important. There are two dudes, one with locks, the other with cornrows, and a lady with a butterscotch complexion. And all they want is a shape-up, tapered sides, a trim, and a crisp but subtle line. And sometimes in life, that's all you'll ever need, a crisp but subtle line. When your barber is done, you'll feel like $1 million and some change. When his fingertips hit you with that apple green alcohol or that witch hazel, it'll sting, but not like a scorpion or a hornet, more like an electric stamp of approval. And when you see the cut yourself in that handheld mirror, you'll smile a really big smile. That's the you that you love the most. That's the you that wins everything. That's the gold medal you. Every person in the shop will rise to their feet and give you a round of applause for being so fly. Not really, but they'll look like they want to. You'll see it in their eyes. It's the look your English teacher gives you when she hands you your last test with a bright red 97 slapped on it. It's how your mother looks at you before she calls you beautiful. Flowers are beautiful. Sunrises are beautiful. Being viewed in your mother's eyes as someone that matters, now that's beautiful. And you'll take it. You don't mind at all. Finally, he'll remove your cape, then swipe you down with a brush made from a golden horsetail. You'll put the money in his hand without even expecting change back. Tip that man. It was worth it. It always is. You know why? Because you'll leave out of the shop every single time feeling the exact same way. Magnificent, flawless, like royalty. Hello, world. A note from the author. Mr. Tony was my barber in the 6th grade. To get to his chair, I rode the Prospect southbound Metro bus to 63rd Street every Thursday. The day of the week, my mother would leave $8 on the kitchen table so that I could get my hair cut. Walking out of that shop, I never felt like the same kid that went in. I couldn't wait for Friday morning so that Carmela Swift, my girlfriend, could see how perfect my box was shaped up. I knew she'd bug out about the 2 parts on the right side of my head, which, in my mind, made me look like Big Daddy Kane. There was no way she'd resist my ruler straight hairline, a precise frame for my smiling, brown, 11-year-old face. That fresh cut made you more handsome. It made you smarter, more visible, and more aware of every great thing that could happen in your world. With this offering, I wanted to capture that moment when black and brown boys all over America visit the shop and hop out of the chair filled with a higher self-esteem, with self-pride, with confidence, and an overall elevated view of who they are, the fresh cuts. That's where it all begins, is how we develop swagger. And when we begin to care about how we present ourselves to the world, it's all about the time when most of us become privy to the conversations and company of hardworking black men from all walks of life. We learn to mimic their tone, inflections, sense of humor, and verbal combative skills when discussing politics, women, sports, our community, and our future. And really, other than the church, the experience of getting a haircut is pretty much the only place in the black community where a black boy is tended to, treated like royalty. Crown, an ode to the fresh cut, focuses on the humanity, the beautiful, raw, smart, perceptive, assured humanity of black boys, sons, brothers, nephews, grandsons, and how they see themselves when they highly approve of their reflections in the mirror. Deep down inside, they wish that everyone could see what they see: a real life, breathing, compassionate, thoughtful, brilliant, limitless soul that matters, that desperately matters. We've always mattered. Derrick Barnes. Working on the railroad, some African Americans learned about opportunities in the North from Pullman porters, people who worked as servants on passenger trains and carried information with them as they traveled across the country. Being a Pullman porter was hard work, but it was one of the best jobs available to a black man. Men who had been enslaved or worked as sharecroppers were happy to be hired. During the early years of the migration, the Pullman Car Company was the largest employer of black men in the country. Room for improvement. Black people heading to the big American cities didn't just come from the South. Some, like Marcus Garvey, came from the Caribbean. He arrived in Harlem in 1916, 2 years after he founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association in his native Jamaica. He attracted millions of followers in the United States before being jailed for fraud in 1923. President Calvin Coolidge later pardoned him, but forced him to leave the country. Garvey's encouragement of black pride and his celebration of African heritage has inspired generations. Lynching. Up until the late 1950s, white people sometimes gathered to torture and murder African Americans in front of approving crowds. Families occasionally held picnics while they watched the killings. These murders were called lynchings, and although they took place throughout the country, most occurred in the South. Between the end of Reconstruction and World War II, more than 4,000 black people died at the hands of white lynchers in Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. The East St. Louis Massacre. East St. Louis is a small factory town in Illinois, just across the river from St. Louis, Missouri. In 1917, it was the scene of one of the worst racial massacres in history. Already angry at blacks taking precious factory jobs, a mob of whites stormed the African American neighborhood armed with guns, clubs, and other weapons. One local newspaper estimated that the mob killed more than 100 black residents. Another 6,000, nearly half of the blacks in town, rushed across the river, fleeing for their lives. Both Ida B. Wells and W.E.B. Du Bois came to town to investigate. Du Bois produced a 24-page report in the crisis. Wells collected first-hand accounts from survivors of the massacre. She hoped her report would pressure the governor of Illinois to see that justice was done in East St. Louis. Wells wrote, "No one has any feeling of certainty that anything will be done, either to punish the rioters or to make the lives and property of Negroes more secure permanently." The Silent March. To protest the massacre and the federal government's reluctance to do anything about it, the NAACP staged the largest public demonstration of its kind ever held in the United States. On July 28, 1917, 10,000 black people marched along Fifth Avenue in New York City. Drums beat softly while the marchers strode silently, holding protest signs. Du Bois marched in front, besides James Weldon Johnson, NAACP Field Secretary and an organizer of the protest. Then came rows of children and women in long white dresses, followed by men in suits and straw hats. As the silent parade proceeded, boys ran alongside and gave out flyers to the crowds who had gathered to watch. The flyer read, "We march because we want to make impossible a repetition of Waco, Memphis, and East St. Louis by arousing the conscience of the country and bringing the murderers of our brothers, sisters, and innocent children to justice." Writing in the New York Age, a week later, James Weldon Johnson described the march as an army with banners. The Red Summer. In 1919, racial violence broke out in more than 36 American cities. Between January 1 and September 14, white mobs lynched at least 43 African Americans. A race riot in Chicago lasted 13 days. In Omaha, a mob of 10,000 whites attacked black neighborhoods and destroyed more than $1 million worth of property. The NAACP pleaded with President Woodrow Wilson to send federal troops to intervene. The violence was so intense that James Weldon Johnson coined the term Red Summer to describe it. "Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea." James Weldon Johnson. Get to know James Weldon Johnson. James Weldon Johnson was one of the most important and versatile writers of his time. With his brother, J. Rosman Johnson, he composed "Lift Every Voice and Sing," sometimes called the Negro National Anthem. The Johnson brothers were among the first black composers whose songs were performed in Broadway musicals. James Weldon Johnson was also an acclaimed poet and novelist. His books, The Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man and God's Trombones, are considered classics of African American literature. In addition to excelling as a creative artist, he spent many years as an official with the NAACP. During that time, he campaigned for a law that would make lynching a federal crime. A bill was introduced in Congress several times, but the Senate never approved it. Black Wall Street. Northern cities weren't the only destinations for ambitious blacks. Successful communities sprouted up elsewhere in the country as well. One such place was Tulsa, Oklahoma. Greenwood, the black neighborhood there, was so prosperous that residents nicknamed it Black Wall Street. On May 30th, 1921, an elevator encounter between a young black man and a white woman led to a fight between black and white residents. Badly outnumbered, the black residents retreated to Greenwood. On June 1, white rioters burned Greenwood to the ground. They destroyed 35 city blocks, including schools, businesses, hotels, restaurants, and theaters, totaling $1.5 million in damage. An estimated 300 blacks were killed, along with 20 whites. Police detained 3,000 black people, but didn't arrest a single white person. When the smoke cleared, the city of Tulsa declined to help the survivors who had lost jobs and property in the riot. Rosewood, Florida, was another prosperous African American community. In January 1923, a rumor started that a black man had assaulted a white woman in a nearby community. In response, an angry mob of several hundred whites hurried to the black community and burned everything in sight. Official reports say that 6 blacks and 2 whites died, although that number is disputed. All the black residents of Rosewood fled the area, never to return. In 1994, Florida became the first state to compensate victims of racial violence. The legislature awarded $150,000 to each person who could prove he or she lived in Rosewood during 1923. People who could prove they had an ancestor who owned property in Rosewood during the same time could also receive payment. And now we will practice how to say goodbye in Spanish. We will be practicing this all week long. To say goodbye in Spanish, you say adios.